Hello, and welcome to this webinar focused on producing Farm to School. I'm Sarah Lane. I'm the Farm to School and Early Childhood Education Program Coordinator at the Arkansas Department of Agriculture. And I've been in this role since August 2019, when there was a bill that passed through Arkansas legislature. You can see on the image here. It was an act for Farm to School to create a program, and that program was decided to be created in the Arkansas Department of Agriculture. And so from program coordinator was hired, and that was me. And I am here to support statewide efforts for Farm to School, coordinate regionally and nationally with other stakeholders across the nation, and support our farmers, our child nutrition directors, our school educators, and many others who aim to increase Farm to School efforts in their area. My contact information is on this slide. If you want to reach out to me, I'm always happy to answer any technical assistance questions. I also host lots of trainings and would love to get you connected. So let's just start briefly about what is Farm to School. So the National Farm to School Network created the core elements of Farm to School, and this nonprofit has been around since 2007. And so they have coined these three core elements or three pillars. First being school gardens, and school gardens can be anything from outdoor raised beds, in-ground growing, can be windowsill full of plants and pots. They can be raised tabletop beds to accommodate those who are in wheelchairs. The sky is the limit really with how a school garden is, and it really does need to be unique to the school environment. And when I'm talking about school, I'm talking about wherever our kids are learning. That can be our early care and child care facilities for our 0 to 5 age kids. It can be all of our K-12 public and private schools. And it also includes places that are alternative learning environments, possibly residential treatment facilities, juvenile detention centers, and others. The second core element of Farm to School is education. So now that we have a school garden, let's dig into how we can educate using that garden. Let's provide some hands-on gardening classes, or let's even go further and start talking about how gardening can tie into our Arkansas state standards. Let's provide cooking lessons, nutrition lessons, science and agriculture lessons. This can happen in our music classes by using dried okra pods. They can make a great rattle sound. This can happen in our science classes when we're talking about 6 plant parts. This can happen in our math classes when we're talking about measurement, weight, height, length. There are so many options to connect a school garden or connect Farm to School education to our Arkansas state standards. And then the last pillar of Farm to School is local procurement. So this means local food purchasing. This is when a school buys local from one of our Arkansas farmers, our Arkansas producers, or our Arkansas makers. So this could look like buying one local item and selling it at a taste test to our students, maybe serving it on the lunch, maybe creating an entire menu of local items. It means that you can buy direct from a farmer, or you could also buy local food through a distributor or an aggregator. There are many ways to buy local for schools, and each school has to use the avenue that's best for them. So why do we do Farm to School? It's really for the kids, right? We know that kids need to be nourished and have great and delicious food to grow up healthy and strong. And we know, and research shows, that when kids have access to healthy foods in schools, they're more likely to pay better attention, to be stronger and more encouraged learners. And then, as I said, grow up and be our future firefighters, our future teachers, our future leaders. And so we want that, and we want all of these children to grow up and have an understanding of our local food system. Now, not just kids win in this place with Farm to School, but we also see farmers winning. So we are supporting our farmers. We're teaching our kids about what farming is, encouraging them to be future farmers. So that's helping support our farmers. And also, when we are buying local food, we're supporting our local farmers because that food is going to be supported coming into our schools and classroom settings right now in COVID. And there'll be that economic transfer with our farmers. And so lastly, that's how our communities win. Farm to School cannot alone. We need dedicated parents and kids and teachers and farmers and farm workers who all come together to support kids at the center of this all and create the best and healthy environment for kids to learn. We aren't alone in our efforts with Farm to School. This is a national program. Every single state has Farm to School state leads like me, as well as others who support Farm to School in their respective states. The National Farm to School Network, which is who I was talking about before, they created this network of core and supporting partners. And so in Arkansas, our core partner is us at the Arkansas Department of Agriculture. Then our supporting partners are the Arkansas Department of Education, Child Nutrition Unit, the Arkansas Department of Human Services, the University of Arkansas Cooperative Extension, and Arkansas Children's Research Institute. So all 5 of us work together to talk about how we can change and evolve statewide policies and practices that are conducive to creating farm to school environments. Also, the USDA supports Farm to School. They do this in 2 ways. The first being that every few years, they do a Farm to School census, which helps us know how many school gardens we have, how many schools are buying directly from farmers or distributors, what is the local food that is being served in schools, and more. So that census really gives us a great snapshot into our state. And the most recent census data is actually from 2013 to 2014 school year, but they did recently do a census last year, and we're hoping to get that updated information. The other thing that the USDA does is that they have a Farm to School grant program. And so every year they release millions of dollars. Last year was close to $17 or $18 million in Farm to School grants. Those go to schools directly, they go to state agencies, they go to farmers and others who are trying to grow their Farm to School efforts. So here's a look at what the 2013 to 2014 census information had for Arkansas. You can see that back in that year, there was just over $1 million invested in local food in Arkansas. And that seems like a lot of money, but really in the scheme of things for school budgets, they're very large. You know, there's a lot of students that they're feeding. And so about 2% of school districts' budgets were spent on local food. There's a lot of room for improvement there. And I'm going to talk about how we've seen that increase over the past few years in some state tracking that we've been doing. You can see that some of the things that schools were interested in buying were fruits and vegetables, mainly being the top 2, but milk or meat and poultry are also options. And back in 2013, about half of the districts had said that they plan to increase their farm to school and local food purchasing in coming years, and we have seen that year after year. So let's take a peek at what farm to school is looking like in Arkansas. Let's look at some examples in the classroom, examples in the community, and examples in the cafeteria. All right, so here our classrooms can be indoor or outdoor gardens, or outdoor classrooms, excuse me. Here you see examples at George Elementary in Springdale where they have some raised garden beds. They've actually painted them, which is really incredible to see at a school garden. It helps create, you know, a pop of color, some excitement and creativity in the learning space. At Ida Burns Elementary, you can see some different sized garden beds. There are 4x8 as well as 4x4 square boxes. They also have some stepping stones, and there's some mulch that goes around all of the garden beds, as well as some garden signs. And down at King Elementary in Van Buren, you can see some students and how each grade level is adopting different garden beds and growing food in that space. And if you peek out back, you can see that there are some rain barrels that are located underneath the rain spout. And there's also a pergola for some outdoor classroom space. So the classroom activities can include school gardens. It can also include garden scavenger hunts, cooking lessons, nutrition lessons, and all of those Arkansas state standards being integrated with farm to school activities. Here are some more of those examples. So on the picture on the left is at Marshall Elementary. They were doing a 6-plant part lesson. You can see this incredible poster that they've created, and they've added arrows from each of the plant parts over to the seed packets that grow that type of plant. So at the top, you can see seeds like corn, Flowers, we can see sunflowers coming up, and down to our roots where there might be carrots and radishes and beets and turnips. At Carolyn Lewis Elementary in Conway, you can see some students enjoying their garden scavenger hunt, where you can see that they were looking for different plant shapes, garden tools, colors, and more. Up next, we have community. It takes a village to support farm to school activities. And here on the left, you can see how a farmer came out from Healthy Flavors, Arkansas to a school in Conway to talk about their nearby farm where they were growing lots of culinary herbs. In fact, those herbs were then used in the school's, the whole school district's menu. And so the students got to taste food from this local farm. I will point out that also in the background of this picture, you can see that this is a compost tumbler, as well as taller raised beds. They're actually stacked too high, which does help with those who be in a wheelchair and need that extra height. It also helps when you have community members, potentially who are older, who are coming out to support gardens. Having those extra tall beds is just more comfortable for reaching into the garden. Now, maybe you can see here in the second picture at Springdale Public Schools, maybe you don't have a farmer come out, but maybe you have a chef come out. And so here we had some local chefs talking about how to use fruits and vegetables in their recipes, and students got to chop and cut strawberries. And they're using these really incredible knives that are serrated on the bottom, kid safe, kids can't really cut themselves. So just great to practice knife skills. You never know what student might be excited about becoming a chef or a cook in the future. And lastly, let's get to cafeteria. All right, so there are many ways to serve local in the cafeteria. First, and the easiest step is to do a taste test. So you can see here on the left, this is at Central Elementary. They were doing a spinach taste test, and they had grown the spinach in their garden. They had some spinach seeds that could be taken home, so kids and parents could grow their own spinach there. And so all they had to do was just grab a spinach leaf, take some seeds, and that was the taste test. In Conway Public Schools here, you can see some sweet potatoes. This is being served as a taste test during lunch. All these sweet potatoes were grown in the school's garden, chopped up and turned into sweet potato fries. And all the students then voted on if they loved it, liked it, or just tried it today. Next is when you get into harvest of the month, harvest of the season, or really serving one local item on the menu. So in this case, you can see the image on the left. In Fayetteville, they were serving some winter squash. They have these incredible promotional materials that they put out so the students and the faculty and parents know this is a special day. You know, we're getting Arkansas grown products in our school. Let's celebrate this. Let's choose the item and let's taste the difference when it's locally grown. You can see then on the far right, another picture of a harvest of the month. This one was in Conway, where they were serving sweet potatoes. You can see the different ways it was grown again, what it looks like chopped up, and some veggie facts. And then in the center, this is a picture of Harvest of the Month in action. They created a local salad using local lettuce from Barnhill Orchards. And then lastly, local can span the entire plate. So let's look at the third level of serving local, where maybe you buy all the items or most of the items on your tray locally. In this example, Fayetteville, they every year since 2005, they have been serving a local lunch. They started doing this with Fayetteville Farmers Market, where they went out, the child nutrition director went out, talked to a lot of the farmers, figured out what was local at the time, and then sourced every item that was going to be on the menu. So in this case, this is the most recent one back from the 2019 to 2020 school year, where you can see everything spanning the entire plate is local. Normally, in non-COVID times, lots of media, representatives, city council members, and other advocates for Farm to School are invited to Fayetteville for this day to enjoy the delicious lunch. This past year, they continued to do it during COVID, but just sourced all the materials and provided it to the students. They highlighted Farm to School in a different way, by doing a decade review. That's where they found some of those great newspaper articles about their partnership with the Fayetteville Farmers Market. All right, so let's really dig into the meat of this of you're a producer, you're a farmer, you're a maker, and you want to sell to schools. So how do you do this? There are really two avenues to make this happen. The first being to directly connect with schools. That is the easiest, I would say, if you are a small or mid-sized farmer, producer, or maker. However, if you have in the past worked with a distributor, you happen to be more of a large-scale farm, maybe the distributor or aggregator route is a good one for you. All right, so this is what it looks like when you sell directly to a school. So the USDA created this great flow chart that helps schools decide how they should buy local. So if you connect with a school, which we'll get into how to do that in just a second, they have three options of how to purchase from you. It all depends on how much they think within their school year they're going to buy. The first level, micro purchase, which is the easiest one, is if they're going to buy $10,000 or less per farmer. So let's, farmer Sally is wanting to sell squash, but doesn't have anything close to $10,000 worth of squash and doesn't plan to sell to at all in the future. This is just a one-time purchase. So the school nutrition director would decide, all right, the micro purchase level seems like the right level. I'm going to do that. What that means is there isn't as much paperwork up front that needs to be created and filled out, and they can just purchase it much quicker. However, let's say that they think that they might buy that squash from Farmer Sally, but they might buy some lettuce later, maybe some tomatoes, and so they're thinking about a small purchase level, which is also sometimes called an informal purchase or an informal bid. That's from $10,000 to $20,000 more or less. And that's called a 3 bids and a buy. So what the child nutrition director has to do is talk with Farmer Sally, maybe go and talk with Farmer Leroy, and maybe go talk with a local grocery store to get different price points for that item. So they have those 3 options, price points for that squash. Then they're going to pick the lowest, or maybe they can even use some different ways to count things like, can the farmer come out to the school? What is the turnover time from harvest to the school, and other ideas. So it doesn't have to be directly focused on the price, but price is the biggest factor in determining where the purchase comes from. So that's that informal, that small purchase level. And then finally, there's a formal bid. We have one district right now, which is Fayetteville, that does a formal bid. And I'm going to show some of their documentation for you to just have the knowledge of. But the majority of schools in our state purchase locally using that micro purchase and small purchase threshold. So a formal is the most formal, right? Just like the name. It is sealed. It's mailed to the school district. It includes additional forms that need to be filled out. And it does then get compared to everyone else who submits a formal bid. There can be price as the main, point on how it's decided, but this is again where you can pull in other factors like geographic preference, those farmer visits, etc. So those are the 3 levels that schools are thinking about when they're wanting to buy local directly from you as a farmer. But like I said, and I'll say again, the majority of schools use that micro purchase and small purchase bid and threshold when they're buying local. So this is what that formal, that 3rd level looks like. There's a whole packet of information. We are so impressed with the work that Fayetteville Public Schools has done to create these packets and have them available and send them out. They first start their packet out by describing why farm to school is really important, what the purpose of this bidding process is, and what their program is, which they call Seed to Student. You can see how they start to talk about what they describe local as, and that is one of the first steps that I recommend to schools that are wanting to buy local, is to decide what their definition of local is. At the state level, we classify local as anything grown or packaged and processed within the state of Arkansas. So for Fayetteville, they have 2 tiers of local. They have that first within Arkansas state lines, the same as what I was just talking about. The second, though, because of the location of Fayetteville being so close there to those neighboring states, they do talk about a second tier being within 100 miles of the district warehouse. Additionally, you can see then the bottom part about the 10% being within state lines. They get those 10% added points if it's within those 100 miles around Fayetteville, but out of the state, it's 6%. So that's how we kind of get to see this price percentage increase or favoring a bit of local products, even if the local product is slightly more expensive versus the other product that is grown potentially in California. Because of this geographic preference point, it might be able to even that out or help that local product win the bid. Additionally, Fayetteville has created this incredible product specification list of what they're looking for and how much, like what are the quantities that they're looking for these. This is just an example of one page of it, but it's really helpful, and I will get into this, for farmers to be thinking about how much they can provide to schools. It's not necessary for a farm to provide everything that the school needs every single day. Maybe it's 1 day per month. Maybe it's one time throughout the whole year. Maybe it's just a small amount that only goes to a couple schools, and the rest of that product is still purchased through the school's regular distributor. So after talking to child nutrition directors, this is what they've described that they've wanted when they want to buy local. First, they need some lead time because schools have to plan out their menus ahead of time. They have to put all their orders in and plan their meals, their menus, and others. So they really need lead time. So at your earliest convenience is when you want to start the relationship with a school. As that develops over time, of course, things can change. There's more flexibility. You know, a lot of schools mention they totally understand that something might happen with the weather. A crop might not come on the right day. That's okay because they can supplement other products that they have from their distributor and they can adjust accordingly. But when you really are starting that initial relationship, you want to give a lot of lead time. And we're looking at, you know, a couple months before to really start to develop this. The second thing is you as the farmer, farm worker, maker, producer, you know the seasonality of your products that you grow. Schools, they might not know. You know, we are living in such a world right now where we have options to buy everything at every time of the year. We've lost a little bit of our understanding of what is seasonal. So if you can come prepared to talk about the seasonality of when you plant whatever you're growing, when you plan to harvest it, how long that lasts, that's really helpful for schools because that isn't knowledge that they have readily available. It's also really helpful for them to know if there's something special about the type of variety that you're using, you know, maybe the specific strawberry or the apple that you have, or maybe the squash, or maybe there's something really special about the beef that you grow. That's really going to help you, you know, sell your pitch. Also, schools need to know how they need to handle and store these products. For example, I've heard, you know, when they get strawberries distributor, those can last longer. They can store them for, you know, multiple days. But if they're getting fresh strawberries off the fields here in Arkansas, those need to be served within the first 24 to 48 hours because that is when they're the freshest and they're going to be the best. So be prepared to really talk about how to handle, how to store, and how to prepare and serve these in their school. Also, if you have sold to other schools or other restaurants and wholesale or farmers markets, have these in mind and ready to tell to the schools so that it provides and shows you know, your reputability. And especially if you've already sold to schools or other institutions, that helps schools feel more comfortable deciding to take that next step with you. So this is what they really suggest. Start small. Call 3 schools that are nearby you. 3 school districts, you're going to want to talk to your child nutrition director or the food service director. And I can help you get connected to a school if you don't know who that person might be. So call those schools, set up a meeting if you can, and try to pilot one of your local products at one school. Maybe maybe the school provides summer lunch. You know, that could be a great idea because so much more is grown in Arkansas during the summer. Have your talking points ready to go and be ready to drop off a sample if you can with the child nutrition unit. So this is how we want to build the relationship. First, at that meeting, you want to think about what produce or food you're going to have available when. So maybe you want to create a chart that talks about that we plant it at this time, this is when we begin to harvest it, this is when it ends. Have things ready, have multiple products if your farm grows multiple products or if you make multiple products. If you can have photos of the produce or actual produce with you when you have your meeting, that's going to be really helpful. And if you can have some history or a farm bio about who you are, your family, that's going to help them see you as a person, see your family as this incredible business that has continued to thrive, especially in this hard times with COVID right now. But it also will be helpful to schools if they want to create some marketing or promotional materials to highlight this local food product. So think about having a farm bio and look at your schedule, have a few dates in mind and times in mind of when you might be available for the school. Oftentimes schools are very busy up until about 1 or 2 because they serve breakfast and lunch. So plan to suggest some early afternoon times, but be flexible. Potentially the school district wants to meet very early in the morning or they happen to have a break in the day. Now, when you go to your meeting, after you've set them up, you're going to bring that produce or food chart availability that you have, those photos, or bring along if you have it, that farm bio that you have. And if you want to become even extra prepared, the schools, if they decide to purchase from you, they're going to need you to fill out a W-9. So you might as well already have one filled out and ready to go so that that doesn't hold up the transaction or the process. So the first thing you want to do, just to recap, is to call schools, right? And try to set that meeting up. And that's something I can help you with if you don't know who to start with and who to contact. I can share contact information. The second thing is you really want to think about what you have, when it's available, and what you can offer. Talk about your farm and have photos or product to share. Then you want to come to the meeting ready to talk about all of that with the school. So with that, that concludes our Producing for Farm to School webinar. I know that only scratched the surface of how to sell locally to schools. And then so I am here to help as much as I can. Please do not hesitate to send me an email, give me a call. My cell number, my work cell number is there. That is the best one to reach me at. I am so passionate about this work and got my start in farm to school as a teacher in a school space. I love eating local food and supporting local farmers and businesses. So let me know how I can, or if you feel ready to go, if you feel like you have the next steps, then I encourage you to take them. And I can't wait to see the increase in local food across our state from every year to come moving forward. There's so much interest right now in our local food space. And so this is a great time to start selling to schools.